Thank you. I'm not one of the poets, but thank you. Welcome to Poetry with a Punch. It's so exciting to have everybody back here again, all together and in person and not socially distanced. I had this awful moment last year when I came in and I was like, where's the audience? And it was like, all the audience is here, they're just socially distanced. I was like, oh. So it's really, really lovely to be back together. I'm not going to take up tons of your time. I just want to welcome you all, say, and how very, very delighted I am to see you all back at the Bradford Literature Festival, and to introduce our extremely amazing host for the evening, who is a comedian and a writer and just all-round a fabulous Wonder Woman. So the amazing Kate Fox. I'm not actually going to say too much because she's got some really exciting stuff to tell you, and I was like dying to tell you, but then I thought I better not say anything because she will tell you herself. But the very amazing Kate Fox has been at the festival quite a few times doing lots of brilliant things, like Bigger on the Inside. I don't know if any of you caught that a few years ago, and she was on the Northerners panel a couple of days ago with her new book, Where There's Muck, There's Bras. Available from the Waterstones and the Festival Hub. Don't forget that. So, without much further ado, please put your hands together for the wonderful, amazing, gorgeous Wonder Woman, Kate Fox.
Oh, thank you, Sanah. Hello, everyone. So nice to be in a room with people. Yeah, I tend to actually, at the moment, I still tend to call myself a stand-up poet, because if you say that you're a poet who does comedy, not that many people will come and see you. Whereas if you say you're a comedian who does poetry, still not that many people will come and see you, but at least you get Arts Council funding. True story of my career. And I am a Bradfordian. I was born in Bradford, lived here for the first about 22 years of my life, and it is still always wonderful to be back, always wonderful to see how the city is changing, how it feels like in many ways it's growing into itself. City of culture, that is absolutely astounding and wonderful. Although, I don't know, I wonder if it's not just me for whom, after the Bradford Literature Festival, the second best thing that's happened in Bradford in recent years is the water fountains. Yay! I don't think people actually need to spend money. The people should spend money on culture in cities, but mainly if they just spent money on water fountains, people will be happy, I reckon. So I don't really have interesting things to tell you. I'm more just going to introduce the act. I might do a very short poem just to check whether you're poem ready. In fact, this is the test of your poem readiness. Although I have to say, this gig is Poetry with a Punch. And the exciting thing about this lineup of amazing poets is it's poets who actually talk about stuff, real stuff. It's not just trees. So I'm going to do quite a trivial thing, but nonetheless, we'll see how poetry ready you are. So a short poem, okay, but with a long title. So this is the title, Notes on the Equivalence of Existential Questioning and a Geordie Exclamation. So that's the title. This is the poem. Why I? Why I? Why I? Well, you're quite poetry ready. That's good. Some of you are a little further behind, but you're quite ready. This is good. This is exciting. I am glad. And I'm so glad to be here. So I could have, so my thing was, a few years ago, I was poet in residence at the Glastonbury Festival, which was very exciting. And they've tended to ask me back, and I haven't come back because it clashes always with the Bradford Literature Festival. And this year, I was a bit like, oh, should I go back because it's Glastonbury, but even though I wanted to be here. I am so glad I did not go to Glastonbury. 3 of my poetry friends have come back with the Glastonbury COVID strain. So I think I was in the right place, doing the right thing at the right time. We all are here tonight, I think. So I'm going to introduce our first poet. We've got 5 wonderful writers and performers. And something that this festival, I think, does so brilliantly is cross that page and stage divide. And for me, that's one of the most exciting things about poetry. In the last few years, has been increasingly doing that in the UK. But actually, we've got international performers who have been doing that in their respective countries also for years and years. So our first poet is Sanah Ahsan. She's come up from London. And as well as being, now I think lots of poets are psychologists in their own way, but Sanah is actually a clinical psychologist. Exactly. Imagine being both. And she's hosted a Channel 4 documentary at one point about how we talk about the over-medicalisation of young people's distress. She's done a TED Talk, which was titled Rewriting My Story with Love and Poetry as a Queer Muslim. She's had great success already in the poetry world. She's won the Outspoken Performance Poetry Competition, and she's currently working on her first collection. So we're really lucky to be getting a glimpse of some work that's going to be even more out there in the future. So can we please put our hands together and give a really warm welcome to Sanah Ahsan.
Hi everyone, how are you doing? Yeah, good. Oh, it's such a joy to be here with you all. And I'm really excited to open this incredible lineup. I'm going to share some poems with you from my new collection. The first poem that I'm going to share is about Ramadan. And I just thought, I know it's not Ramadan, but I wanted to bring the spiritually enriching vibes of Ramadan into the room. And I also thought, if I can't share a poem about Ramadan in Bradford, where can I share a poem about Ramadan? Do you know what I mean? So, this first one is called Ramadan's Greetings. We pluck the new moon out of Mecca sky, a lottery ball. Make a guessing of God's plan. First fast will be Thursday. Trust me. No, fam, Friday. You'll see. It comes when it comes. The day tall and endless. We empty our stomachs, our senses, restless, sexless, whizzing ablutions. Can we wash ourselves of ourselves? Want to no longer want what we don't get? Wait. Witness the greed growl, grumble, gratitude in the vacant gut. We greet the God that is more God than the God we greet. The wanting never wanes, desperate desire for the sun to sleep. Mosque sealed, so we meet in open mouths at the date's wrinkled skin, bursting under bite. Sweetness floods into us, like the quiet dark of dusk, shadowless, hungry eater of light. Thank you. The next poem that I'm going to read for you is called The Angels Are Genderless. They lead from the back of the mosque, arranged in rows, 100 hijabs glint like halos. And I wait to arrive in this throat with the missing apple. Undecided breasts sporing theyhood. Unowning is sleepless. Nights tip moist fingers over untamed carpet. I grow wiry with these gangly shins until they resemble my emasculated father. Still, I cannot unbecome my mother in those unbending trousers. Will there ever be an Eid where I rock Emmul Shirvani and follow from the front? Thank you. How are you all doing? You still with me, yeah? Yeah? So I am going to share a poem about my dad. We actually were here, me and Anthony were here on Saturday for Lyrical Mirfil. Who was here for Lyrical Mirfil? Oh, amazing, cool. So yeah, it was a really gorgeous night. We made magic. And I was telling my dad about it. I was messaging my dad. And he replied to me with massive capital letters saying, "Make video!" exclamation mark. And I was like, oh shit, I forgot to make a video. So if anyone here wants to make a video for my dad, please do, innit? This poem is for my dad, and it's called Shirzada, which basically it translates as prince. I have my father's little toe, stubborn little shit that refuses to touch the floor. In spring, he wears woolen indoors. Heat rolled up halfway becomes a gubba on his silver head. He eats khichdi with his good hand. Teeth stained by barn amber leaf, auguries of indiscipline. I know 6 a.m. by his humming. Throatful, aweless lungs make sounds for help. He asks me to write a letter to his boss. What could I teach failing memory and a nation's supplication? He is a shair in Urdu, Bangla, Punjabi, but labors over rungs of the white man's word. And when he doesn't know the answer to my climbing questions, his smile says, "Ask the Google." My father is still that little boy who pissed on a Karachi gin tree and swears it had him speaking English out of nowhere for a week. He places bets on miracles. In Shangri, London, he buys a lottery ticket every day, my date of birth, his talisman. I win him disapproval. But he keeps playing the same numbers, trusting he made me. A bed every day undoes its making. He ruins me sheer shairis, splinters them in half English, and when my girlfriend marlishes his feet, playing the dream daughter that I could never be, he quickly rises into sleep, little toe flying free from the edge of a strewn blanket. Thank you. Have we got any Tupac fans in the room? Yeah? So I'm a big Tupac fan, and hip hop was definitely like the foundations of my entry into poetry. And the collection, my forthcoming collection, is really exploring in moments gender and masculinity. And so yeah, this poem is doing that. And I don't know if anyone knows, but there's a bit of a theory that Tupac was queer. So yeah, this poem is kind of playing with that, and it's about me meeting Tupac in a gay club. Because why not? It's called Tupac Speaks. A neon pink light flashes off his thick gold chain. His thug life tattoo is dotted with sequins, and a passerby places a fuchsia fedora on his glistening forehead before throwing a feather boa over his stiff neck. Their muscular chests are pressed together. Sweat beads merge until sticking. I ain't got time for bitches takes on a whole new meaning. I ask him for a dance before asking what it means to be a man. He places his palm on my lower back tenderly and whispers, "Soften." Thank you. So, has anyone seen Russian Doll on Netflix? Anyone here? I can't see, so you need to like make noise. Yeah. So it's a really great show on Netflix that basically is collapsing time boundaries as a device to explore intergenerational trauma. And for me as a psychologist, like, I love that shit. It's really, really great. And it's also kind of built the foundations for me it inspired me to do that in my art a little bit. So looking what it means to collapse time boundaries in the poems. So this poem does that, and it's exploring, I guess, my maternal lineage and looking at intergenerational trauma in the context of partition, but playing with kind of that collapse of time boundaries. So yeah, everybody should watch Russian Doll, it's sick. This is called Split. That child is my mother. Her hands carnations. I hold root with tinier grip. We are both 5, grinning golden into futures doughy, dewy. My face splits wider. Her unimaginable joy takes index finger, draws an X on my right cheek. The trace so soft, slight. We are delicate, blooming a softer violence. That child is my daughter. She is 3, so am I. The hips of our front door hang slightly open. We wander out into strings of yellow, trailing over Punjab's dust, not yet split. Silent. Echoes of giggling legs waddle towards the detonated sound. It is mother, as little as we, holding her mother, bearing sky, a frozen lake, acres of mirror. I cannot tell her from water, from me, from explosion, from light. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to just do one last poem for you all. But before I do that, I just want to say a massive, massive thank you to Sanah for curating this unbelievably beautiful festival. I was here on Saturday and obviously I was supposed to leave and go home, and ended up staying for the whole, the whole week. And I just feel like I've been really looked after, and it's such a gorgeous family energy here in the team. And I'm just really grateful to have been part of it. And the festival lineup is sick. And it's such an honor as well to be sharing a lineup with just people that I rate so much, like Anthony, Carlos, Malika, Atif. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful. This last poem is called My Dua is Love, which translates as My Prayer is Love. And that's the title poem of my forthcoming collection. Yeah, thank you so much. I am learning that the desire is not dirty, that I need not pray myself clean, that shame need not shove me to my knees, forehead to Zameen to bring me closer to my deen. My dua is love. My dua is love. It pours pure, like Zamzam through my body, through her body, through my body, through her body. We are holy. We are holy in liquid sighs and sweat-soaked skin. I cannot tell where she ends and I begin as love interweaves through estuaries of limb in this tapestry of brown. It is not a sin. It is not a sin. Instead, a call to prayer. It is a call to prayer whenever my name leaves her lips with devotion. I know that God is here. Whenever I am with her, I know that God is here. Thank you so much.
Sanah, Ahsan, how beautiful was that? Oh, what a gorgeous ending. That's a poem to just take into your body and heart and mind, isn't it? And sit with and be with. Absolutely beautiful. And isn't it, poetry that can, you talk about deconstructing psychology and questioning and troubling colonialism and gender And all these things, which is what Sanah is doing, but also creating beautiful, beautiful poetry. So, next up, we have Atif Tokir, who is going to perform poetry in Urdu with an English translation on the back. Another amazingly interesting, multi-layered person. He's actually currently working as a radio journalist in Germany. I originally trained as a radio journalist, but covered not always very important stories. The first story I ever did was about finding a dead frog found trapped in a bag of lettuce in Whitley Bay. Atif tends to cover more significant global issues, it's fair to say, both in his journalism and in his poetry, which kind of looks at and questions the political situation in his native Pakistan. He is a man that people listen to. I was just saying to him, wow, I noticed that you have 185,000 Twitter followers. And he said, oh, that's nothing. I have 500,000 Facebook followers. 500,000, imagine having a thought and 500,000 people being interested in your thought. But that's because, he has good thoughts. So that's why. So we're going to hear some of them. Was there anything else I wanted to say? Oh, yeah. So he is currently working on his first novel in English as well. But it's poetry tonight. So can we please welcome Atif Tokir?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining in again. And it's so nice feeling to see again people, in person contact, and then this social distancing is again, going away. I would like to share 2 poems today, and I was in London, so on the way to Bradford, I have translated these poems. I would like to say thanks to Nazish and Madhya for bringing those poems in translations here. So I would write. Yep, Madhya, we're ready. Okay. So my first poem is relativity or izafiyat in Urdu. ये वक्त क्या है? ये वक्त क्या है? इजाफियत है. ये वक्त क्या है? इजाफियत है कि जैसे गर्दिश की लम्हा लम्हा नगूं सरी को सफर समझना. ये वक्त क्या है? इजाफियत है कि जैसे गर्दिश की लम्हा लम्हा नगूं सरी को सफर समझना. कि जैसे माकूस जावियों को सफ़ीर गश्ते सही समझना. ये दायरा वार गर्दिशों के नुकाते मख्फी को देख लेने के एक दावे से बढ़ के क्या है? ये वक्त क्या है? ये वक्त क्या है? इजाफियत है कि जैसे गर्दिश की लम्हा लम्हा नगूं सरी को सफ़र समझना. कि जैसे माकूस जावियों को सफ़ीर गश्ते सही समझना. ये दायरा वार गर्दिशों के नुकाते मख्फी को देख लेने के एक दावे से बढ़ के क्या है? हम एक गुज़श्ता से हाल और फिर आइंदा होते हैं या खड़े हैं. ज़मां मकां की हर एक तफ़हीम बखिया बखिया उधड़ रही है. कि 4 समतों के इस ताउन के बीच भी तो 1000 समतों का जाल सा है. हर एक यकीन को किसी हवाले, किसी तसव्वुर, किसी गुमां से ही निस्बतें हैं. हर एक हरकत, हर एक सुकूनत तजाद हो के भी मुंसलिक है. सुकून क्या है? खुद अपने मानी में दायरा है. सुकूत क्या है? इजाफियत है. सुकूत क्या है? इजाफियत है. सो इसकी पैमाइशों को फिर शोर की जरूरत. यहां पे पैमाइशें हवाला, यहां जरूरत भी एक हवाला. हकीकतों के समुंदरों का हर एक कतरा 1000 इम्कान लिए हुए है. हकीकतों के समुंदरों का, हकीकतों के समुंदरों का हर एक कतरा 1000 इम्कान लिए हुए है. हर एक इम्कान इजाफियत है. शऊर इंसान इजाफियत है. वजूद वजदां इजाफियत है. खुदा हवाला है या हकीकत? अगर हकीकत है तो हवाला खलाएं कैसे? अगर हवाला है तो हकीकत सवाल क्यों है? ये कायनातों को नूरी सालों से नाप लेने की एक सही है। तजाजुबे बेकरां की वुसअत, सिताराए इंतहा से लेकर वजूद बे इंतहा की सरहद उबूर करना खुदा कुशी है कि खुदकुशी है। ये सब सरासर इजाफियत है। हर एक पैगंबर इजाफियत है। लहब का बिस्तर इजाफियत है। तमाम मंजर इजाफियत है। ये वक्त क्या है? इजाफियत है। Okay, my second poem is Auschwitz. It was a Nazi concentration camp, and unfortunately in Urdu language, and especially in Urdu poetry, you hardly find any literature or content describing the pain and miseries of the people who suffered this Nazi regime's brutalities. So this poem, Auschwitz, is dedicated to the victims of this murderous regime and the times. And it's a story of one Jew girl. Her name was Sarah. Auschwitz. मेरा नाम सारा है, सारा गुटनबर्ग। मेरा नाम सारा है, सारा गुटनबर्ग। मेरा जुर्म इतना सा है कि मुझे एक यहूदी घराने में फूंका गया था। मेरे बाप दादा यहूदी थे, वो भी इसी जुर्म में डाखाव जा चुके हैं। डाखाव वाज अनदर कंसंट्रेशन कैंप। मेरे बाप दादा यहूदी थे, वो भी इसी जुर्म में डाखाव जा चुके हैं। मैं कैसे उतारूं बदन से अकीदा, अकीदा जो मैंने चुना भी नहीं है। मैं कैसे उतारूं बदन से अकीदा, अकीदा जो मैंने चुना भी नहीं है। मुझे नोचने वाले मुर्दार खोरों ने मेरा बदन मुझको लौटा दिया है, मगर पैरहन मेरे तन पर नहीं है, मगर पैरहन मेरे तन पर नहीं है। मैं बाहों से सीना छुपाए हुए, दोनों टांगें सुकेड़े, कई दूसरे अपने जैसे बदन ढांपते मुजरिमों की कतारों में शामिल हूँ और जानती हूँ कि इनमें से हर एक का जुर्म यकसां है। ये सब अहदनामाए अव्वली के तसव्वुर की तामील में मिस्रता इस्फहां, रेगज़ारे हिजाजी से स्पेन तक पैरहन छीन कर, बाजुओं से बदन ढांपता छोड़कर, अज़ल ताबद हर जगह हर ज़मीं से निकाले गए। सब के सब आउशविट्स के जहरीले तेज़ाब में गुस्ले आखिर की संगीन राहों से कटते हुए, सांस लेने की ख्वाहिश में खुद अपने हाथों से अपने गले नोचते, बाकी मांदा बदन बेकफन बेनिशां कब्र को सौंपते। मूसा मूसा कभी इब्राहीम और याकूब के मोजज़ों को पुकारा किए। सब बनी इस्राएली कबीले से हैं, वो कबीला जिसे आज तक कोई भी सरजमी सेंचती ही नहीं। आउशविट्स एक अजियत का मरकज़ है, लेकिन तसलसल भी है। नाकबूलियतों का, अदम ज़िंदगी का, तमस्खुर का, तहकीर का। इससे पहले की तारीख़ भी सिर्फ गिनती का, आदाद का खेल थी, और अब भी यहाँ लाख 2 लाख की बहस में जिस्म पर, जिस्म के अंदरूं मेरे घाव, मेरी रूह के बल, मेरी बेज़मीनी, मेरे नंगे पाँव, मेरी मौत, मेरी अजियत की तफसील खो जाएगी। मैं कि सारा गुटनबर्ग बस एक तसलसल हूँ इस बस्ती रायगानी की जंजीर का। थैंक यू।
Gosh, that was devastating and powerful. Thank you, Atif. Amazing. And actually, how interesting that the theme of time and its collapse and the relativity of time carried across Sanah and Atif's work. Oh, yes, it's weird seeing the floaty fog. It's taking me into a kind of strange floaty. I might have to do a really trivial, but no, I'm not going to do it. Sorry, no, I'm not. Sorry, let's stay with where we are. I really want to mention my dungarees though now. Sorry. Some other people are wearing dungarees in the audience. I do that because our next poet, as well as being literally one of the best poets in the country, one of the most admired and respected, also, to my mind, is one of the most sartorially impressive. And I had meant to mention about my clothing choices. Basically, during the pandemic, many things changed for me, not least my style, which appears to have morphed into children's TV presenter having a midlife crisis. And that's okay, isn't it? That's okay. Post-pandemic, we all changed in various ways. This was one of my ways, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Let me properly introduce, and I'm so glad to introduce her. We've shared many bills. I think we were last together on Radio 3, Spoken Word Cabaret, The Verb, but she's just one of the best poets to see live. Malika Booker, who is a British poet of Guyanese and Grenadian parentage. She's the founder of Malika's Poetry Kitchen, which has mentored and launched so many poets over the years. She's a lecturer. She is a prize-winning poet across many prizes. She's one of Penguin's Modern Poets. She won the Forward Poetry Prize for Best Single Poem in 2020. I most remember recently, a couple of years ago, at the Bradford Literature Festival, her and Khadija Ibrahim, another brilliant poet, giving the best dialogue there's ever been on the virtues of, those shopping trolleys that you pull along. They love those shopping trolleys. Like, they love them so much that I feel that they should be selling them on a YouTube channel of some sort. But what Malika will be giving to us now is a set that is itself a trolley filled with delight and truth and beauty and power. So please welcome Malika Booker.
Good evening, everybody. Oh, wow, there's nobody in here. It's so dark, I can't even see. Let me try that again. Good evening at the back. Yes. Good evening to the front. Yay, I'm just so happy to be here. So I did that as a warm-up because the first poem I'm going to do is to my mom. And basically, you're going to help me. So basically, my mom is Caribbean, and has all these sayings, and she lives between the Caribbean and America. And when she talks to me, I doodle them down. So basically, I'm going to say what my mom says, and you're going to feel my pain. So when I do this, you're going to say pain. See that warm up? Let me just try this. Pain. Oh, this is great. My mother knows. Pain. A sorrowful gospel type of. Pain. A slowly losing her eyesight, eye drops every night. A headache, worrying for her children overseas, praying for their safety. Pain. A stare through each night, eyes blackening, hope they're all right. Pain. Yeah, my mother knows pain. If my children don't call, do they still love me? Pain. A worrisome, dying, gray-haired black children too far away. Pain. Or will my daughter ever have children? She's 38 years now. Pain. Your womb is becoming stone, sermon for her only girl on her birthday. Pain. Yeah, my mother knows pain. So what did I do wrong bringing them up? Pain. My son has gone astray. Someone put Obi on him, so I have to play really hard. Pain. And look how so-and-so children do so well. I wish mine were like that. Pain. Yeah, my mother knows pain. It's the house now empty, no one to cook for. Pain. And I can't let go, have to let go. It's a let me tell you how to bury me. Pain. I want a plain box, no fancy coffin, or I'll come back and haunt you. Pain. And don't have no big set of people coming around calling it a wake. Pain. It's a let me tell you who will get what after I'm gone so you don't fight. Pain. And don't worry, I'll soon be dead and gone, and then you will miss me. Pain. Yeah, my mother knows pain. Thank you. I'm going to go to the Bible, and I'm going to do a lot of poems where I'm interpreting the Bible. Imagine the Bible is set in the Caribbean, and the characters are black, Caribbean, or of the Caribbean diaspora. And this is Jesus Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, the night before he was going to be crucified. I cannot tell you what the trees whispered to him that night. Air ripe with the scent of living, fruits pungent, leaves clapping, harmonizing with the cricket's rhythmic screech. What could trees whisper to a black man juggling sorrow on the eve of his catastrophe, face tortured, back bent from the weight of prophecy, kneeling in damp soil, thoughts wrestling, each worry a serrated knife gorging flesh? Say he was weeping, beating his chest, murmuring, "Big man, don't cry," wanting to unshackle from his father's heirloom. But what papa does not force their son into a square box, each corner reinforced with a black tar of hardening expectations? And the garden was not a tonic. When he spoke to the leaves, they did not turn their backs, curl into their spine, to recede into their own nourishment, leaving him to keep his own vigil on this seemingly ordinary night, the eve of his prophesied death. And those disciples, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here and watch with me," he asked them. Oh, those fickle-hearted men, how their snores became bass in the ripe music of this garden. How they will regret not catching the tremor in his voice, the slight waver each pause. Regret will sit heavy on their chests whenever they remember this garden and not reading the nuances, his pathos, between each utterance of his asking. "Sit ye here while I go to pray," meaning sit so we can converse in the language of grief, meaning it is my last night with you, let us partake in the language of wake, lick down dominoes and make old talk. "Come the man," meaning be my brothers tonight. Come, lick down double six and rock the table, disturb the still of the night. He wanted old talk, lime and labrish, my soul exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. But his brother's snores mingled with the owl's hoot, and the leaves turned their back, while his kinfolk sprawl out in sleep, and the nails, the bones breaking, splintering, bearing timber on your back like a donkey carrying load. Say he's weeping, beating his chest, murmuring, "Big man, don't cry," mourning his lack of ordinariness, mourning his body will not rot, worm or decay, maggots will not feed on his flesh. Now his palms dig into the soil, earth in fingernails, sifting the dirt man's flesh is molded from, burying this sorrowful weight, then standing as the stuttering light of morning approaches. Thank you. I'm going to go to Eve now. And so this is, Eve, who supposedly got thrown out of the Garden of Eden. So Eve is quite dramatic. "I sit here, sprawl off on red earth, my foot cock up, my legs spread wide, my brown skin bubbling in the hot sun, sitting like such a rude gal, naked like nature, the air sweet and sticky like rich condensed milk, my hair coiled in braids circling a black halo afro. It is the morning after creation, and I cup my breasts, thinking these breasts will suckle, relaxed as the sculpture goddess molds my body, shaping me from sweet mud into her image. And I was surprised to learn, there were some things in the Bible I would be like, what is the name of that person? So I was like, what is Samson's mother's name? You know, we know about Samson, but what is his mother's name? And she was like, oh, let me tell you about me and this name. So this is Samson's mother. Erased. My name was bitter bush in my husband's mouth. So vile, he spat it out the day we hooked up and never slipped up. Though once in a while he bellowed woman, wife, like he bellowed sheep and dog. Yet even his puppies had names. All of my life, I was the braying donkey in his pen, the hog. How he would rest his palm in my head and pat it to show gratitude like I was his pet. How I wanted caresses outside of our bed. And when he learned I could not conceive, his mood was as coal in a black pitch lake, was as a camel trampling my already broken back. 2. And so this one is, she's answering back the Bible. So one, it's a style called a coupling, which is modeled after a poet, invented by a poet called Karen McCarthy Wolf. So there's the line of the Bible, and then she's going to answer back. It was great to have women answering back. Oh, it was such a pleasure to write. Sometimes writing can be a pleasure. Answered prayers. Behold, thou shalt conceive and bear a son. That day the worms crawling in my belly stopped. Drink not wine, neither eat any unclean thing. And I bound my belly tight with rope, picked food like bird. For the child shall be a Nazarene to God from the womb. Yea, I dance to bear sand to the music of these words. Thou shalt conceive and bear a son. A little cloud briefly darkened. You were not a girl? The woman, barren, his wife. My name was a speck of dust between these men's feet. And the woman bare a son and called his name Samson. You, little gooseberry, were named before you ripened. And the woman, she, the woman, the wife, my name rattled the bars of their throat, yet still remained imprisoned. So I'm going to finish with 2 more. So I really love these words. I found out that they're used, for a lot of people use them for weddings. And it's Ruth and Naomi in the Bible. And she says, her son has died, and she says, daughter-in-law, leave me. And she says, you know, entreat me not to leave. Where you go, I go. And I thought, oh, I'm going to write a poem about that. I love it. And then the poem says, I know what I want to be. Because you sit down to write, and you think you're in control, and the poem takes over. So this is Ruth and Naomi. Ruth, go, sweet daughter-in-law, leave me. Entreat me not to leave. My son, your husband, is dead. Leave. Wherever you go, I'll go. I'm an old fowl, a homeless chicken. Wherever thou lodgest, I will lodge. Walk back to your people. Go rest in your mother's bosom. Leave whilst you still swing those hips, child. Thy people shall be my people. Child, my body decays. Age crawls me to death's muscled chest. Where thou diest, will I die. Her words prostrate before me. Go, leave, child. Was this when she grasped both my palms and pulled my body flush against her, my sagging breast against her pert ones, my spread belly rolls against her stone-wall belly? Was this when she brushed lips at the side of my lips, a flicker, a whisper? Was this when her palm splayed in the dip above my buttocks, then the feather tap of fingers, then the slight tickle of the dimpled dips? Was this when we prostrate? Was this when we baptized? Was this when I found myself on the floor hollering broken syllables like ah, like wah, like? Was this when our altars broke? That night I found grace. That night she had eat and was suffice. That night, I heard my son's voice from the grave, and he spoke about his wife. And the last poem I'm going to do is an excerpt from a poem that was commissioned. So we were commissioned to write poems to find stories that had not been, that had been erased from history. And this was the stories of West Indian soldiers who served in the First World War. And I thought about the mother getting the news in Jamaica that Herbert Morris, her son, had died. He was caught, he was suffering from Yes, but what was it called? Shell shock, it was called in those days. So he was suffering from shell shock. So he kept running from the guns when they were going, and they just decided that he was a coward, and they shot him by firing squad. So I thought about the mother in Grenada, in Jamaica, getting this news. Him dead. I rend my red cotton dress, beat my breast bloody, sewed coarse rice sack dresses that grate my skin raw, rubbed ashes from rage into my sobbing skin. Unlike Jacob, my son is dead. Oh, son, who bathe your carcass down there foreign? Who fling white rum upon the ground? Son, I have no language for this loss. Him dead. I turn over the mattress. I line up your slippers and dress shoe, rearrange the furniture, find I care nothing for terms like deserter or coward. You are my son. What title could belittle my son? Oh, son, who pelled down dominoes down there foreign? Who keep vigil over your body all night? Son, I have no language for this loss. Him dead, I yank out my cane rose, tear my hair out in savage tugs and pulls until it turned matted bush, a hive for bees, fat, succulent one, ruled by a king called George. The day I whispered your death news to the bees, I broke their king's back. Oh, son, who stopped their clocks down there foreign? Who sings Sankey and reads scripture? Son, I have no language for this loss. Him dead, I covered the mirrors, sipped cocoa tea, watching the breadfruit tree where your navel string was buried, and feel to take an axe and chop, chop, chop when I think about how they take you whole and send you back an inked name on paper. 2. They say when she heard, she fell into a trance. Then she holler, and the next day she went into the front of the garden with a shovel and dig and turn the earth till her hands looked like raw meat, and blood dripped from that handle. And when she'd made a row of beds, how she bent her backs and crawled into the earth, pushing in seeds in that punishing sun, howling her son Herbert's name like psalm, like hymn, like scripture. It would be said that in the absence of a body, she had to bury something. How she'd rather he'd returned home crippled or crazy like some of the soldiers deposited back like sour fruit, limbs missing, or muttering to themselves, or flinging their bodies down on the ground at every loud noise, blocking up the city like vagrants, like the refuge that England refused. How she'd seen that there was no glory to be had, so prepared herself. Was it not she who told him to go? Sign up for king and country, for motherland, for glory, proud of her soldier's son, knowing his insides were soft like egg, but determined for him to return, but not like this. News on a paper, scratching on a telegraph, visit to her door, how guilt mixed up with sorrow, and now she's making him a garden of flowers, a monument, a way of burying something into this island's earth. 3, in this small place, your worth as a woman is measured by the number of sons you produce. Each day is long now, and I cook up pots of empty. The main ingredient is loss with a dash of woe. Its scent foul, stagnant, and cloudy. My only boy child is dead, young, still in his chin. That bitch of a stepmother, England, built a forest of bones for rats to feast on succulent black men. The scent of our actions rancid as hell, and now I'm worthless. My grief is a carcass swinging on a butcher's hook, stabbed into the back of my neck. And my neighbor's sympathy simply slices each pound of flesh. Thank you. Thank you, Bradford. This is one of the best literature festivals. Thank you so much.
The majestic Malika Booker.
That's amazing.
A legend. What a first half. Trauma and time and love and hope. Poetry with a punch indeed. You can take away some of that poetry with a punch by buying some of the books that are available from each of the poets there. Outside there in the foyer, the poets will be signing, and there'll also be books from our second half's two poets, Carlos Andrés Gómez and Anthony Anaxagorou, out there too. But of course, the poets will also be signing their books at the end. So I'm going to give you another short poem just to see if we're in the poetry place. This is the title, Etiquette. I always say thank you to the driver as I'm getting off the bus. Saying thank you very much would be causing an unnecessary fuss, since they were probably going that way anyway. Oh, you're back. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I'm not sure there is actually a deep existential idea underlying that poem's just that poem as it is. Although I have to say, actually, in the olden days, when I was less enlightened, less woke, it was the bus driver was referred to as he, since he was probably going that way anyway. But bus drivers can be many genders, so I have updated and changed. And although there's not as many female bus drivers as I would like, there we are. I mean, actually, I tend not to call myself a feminist poet, even though I am a feminist and I am a poet. But it's just if you put the two words together, they can become mutually off-putting in certain situations. A bit like the words Christian and musician. Do you know what I mean? But you've got to own your truth, own your identity. And that is what the poets tonight are doing. That is good. Let me introduce the next one properly. Now, Deaf Poetry Jam was a very cool American TV and touring show that featured some of the very first and best performing poets I ever saw. So I was really excited to see that Carlos Andrés Gómez actually featured in the 6th season of that HBO show, and it really was kind of raising what could be done in performance and spoken word to a higher level. He's a Colombian-American poet who's won a ton of prizes for his written work and his performance. And I'm particularly impressed that he's already performed today at the lunchtime poetry event, and he said on Twitter he was going to perform a completely different set at lunchtime to now, so that people who had seen both would be seeing utterly different poems from him. And he's also said that he couldn't wait to return to Bradford. He first visited in 2019 for one of the winter pop-up events. So it is so nice to welcome him back, and can we please do that by applauding for Carlos Andrés Gómez.
If you are grateful to be alive, make some noise. Make some noise. Oh my goodness. Give it up for Atif. Give it up for Sanah. Give it up for Malika. Oh my goodness. What a night. Anthony, I can't wait to see you. So, one of my favorite things about a festival like this is we get inspired by each other, and we kind of, I think in some ways, directly or indirectly, I think remain in conversation with each other's work. Is that fair to say, Anthony, Malika, Sanah, right? And so earlier today for Lunch Bite, it was Sharina, Anthony, and I. Anthony read this piece, brilliant piece from his book that you need to buy after the formalities, about him navigating the question, where are you really from this woman after a show that he met, right? And I was I resonated strongly with that, because I've gotten that question, where are you really from? After I tell people, Anthony, I'm from New York, they say, no, but where are you actually from, right? And I feel like that's a question that maybe a lot of people here might be able to relate to. So I felt like I had to do this piece. It's a much older piece, so it's a shout out, Anthony, to our former spoken word life. But I felt inspired in conversation with Anthony's poem, and I dedicate it to all of you. And this is kind of the blanket response I wish I could give to the 7,000 people who've asked me that question. It goes like this. The man's words to me are not offered, but flung. So what are you? Where are you from? I say, New York. But your name is Carlos. I mean, where are you really from? I say, New York. Bueno, yo soy latino. Mi padre es colombiano. Mi madre es estadounidense. Nací in New York City. I lived in 4 countries, moved 12 times, went to 12 schools before I graduated high school. Is not what I would say in 12,341 years, because I don't know a damn thing to anyone. What am I? What am I, a financial aid form, a vegan red velvet cupcake recipe? Dude discovers his first Latino with green eyes and suddenly appoints himself the authority on Latinidad, like, but you totally don't look Mexican. Oh, Colombian, but like, what percentage are you? Do you speak it though? Fluently, dance salsa well? Oh, but not both parents. You've been there, but not lived there, so you weren't born there. Yeah, I'm not a government questionnaire. I'm not an anecdote for your homogenous social gathering of your homogenous friends. I know everyone you hang out with has a name you can pronounce. Andor share. Andor sounds pulled directly from an episode of Leave It to Beaver. Here's the deal. Latin America is not just Mexico. Actually pronounced Mexico, pero whatever. Central America is not part of South America, and Mexican is still not a language. The question, where are you from in our current America, is a slur disguised with a question mark. A passive-aggressive microaggression saying you are other, saying you are not from here, saying you are not, nor will ever be one of us, saying go back to where you came from. But I am from a place beyond place. A place where once you're from there, you can never leave. Because it exists beyond dirt and flesh, beyond your linear and limited concept of time. I am from bloodlines unkillable as water. I am the return that is only earned when absence has stretched its greedy void across a passage, as stoic and sacred as Nabuela's hard-edged love. I am my black and Latina daughter's grace. Chimered into the cobalt pulse of these once too often fists, I am a boy. Without a word of English in his mouth, in a Catholic school classroom in South Florida, his son on a stage in Bradford, England tonight, 61 years later, reading this poem for him. I am the steady ray of light, unlocking my mother's teeth, tossed skyward with a laugh. What hard-earned joy looks like, carved from the wreckage of a lifetime's worth of grief. You are not ready for the answers to the questions you ask, not ready for the worlds these words might shake free. You could never understand what I am, or where so many of us are from. So I'm hoping it's very different here in the UK, and I imagine it is for several reasons, but we have mass shootings a lot in the United States, you may have heard about. And I have a 6-year-old daughter, and a month ago she was talking about a lockdown drill. Do you all know what a lockdown drill is? Does this happen in England as well? It kind of horrifies me that you all have heard about this, but I guess everyone is just horrified by the United States, as you should be. So what a lockdown drill is, for children of all ages, is you go under your desk, as people did of my mother's generation preparing for nuclear war, and you put your hands over your head and barricade the door in case there's an active shooter in your school. This is something everyone does. And so we average more than one mass shooting a day in the United States. And the response, about 100% of the time, rounding down, is a bunch of politicians who are in the pockets of the gun lobby tweeting thoughts and prayers and not doing anything else. And so I wrote this poem after a recent shooting a little over a month ago. It goes like this. Prayers and thoughts. After the shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, on May 24th, 2022. Now is not the time. If nothing else, let's agree to disagree. It is what it is. Let's not be negative. You know what opinions are like. Lies of the devil. Here we go again. It's all good. Through him, all things are possible. Just pray on it. The time is not now. Again, we go here. Devil, the lies, all things, him. Is it what it is? Again, go. No, wait. Disagree to agree. Let's pray on it. Nothing. If. Are things possible? All things? Like our opinions? To dis, to let, to blood, let and let. Let God, devil, the lies. Oh God, yes, let us, him. Through, no God but claims, through him, through and through. Are things all possible? Claims but God, no, him, us, let's, yes, God lies, the devil let go and let our children, like our opinions, no things are possible, wait to disagree, like what our opinions know, here again, go we, be to, here not, is time, things, all, let's all, children, it what is, children, our, like, children, lies, the children, go now, children, there, lies, the children, him, children, there, lie, the children, shoot, I, children, lies, the children, is school, children, lie, the children, not God, children, lies, the children, lies, children, the lies, children, the lies, children, the lies, children, lie, children. That night, I kneel beside each child, mid-dream, after kiss, pause, feel heat on cheek. My son, my daughter, each alive. When I was in university, I studied history. So in the United States, that means everyone's like, yo, so what was the 12th president of the United States? And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know any of the presidents, so don't ask me, okay? I don't remember a lot of the details. Anyone else have that? Folks who went to university? Like literally can barely retain anything. You're like, how did I stay this for 4 years and can remember like none of the details? But there's one thing that's like a greater lesson of my study of history that I took with me, and it was this. One of the things about great social and political movements that I think we have to learn from now is that the curation of joy is a radical act. And I wrote this poem, an assignment I gave myself in a very dark time, to write a poem about what I was grateful for. So I could always turn to this, even in the darkest of times. I think it's fair to say right now is like the darkest of times. Is that fair? In a while. Shoot. Woo. And this is called Praise. And it's from my book, Fractures, and it goes like this. Praise. Because my grandmother's final days lasted 23 years. And so we'd rush each time. Say goodbye, and goodbye, te quiero mucho, abuelita. Te adoro. Because my mother's truest mother is grief, who taught her the slack-jawed abandon of joy. Because my daughter strung together a 4-syllable word this afternoon. because I say I love you so much to my wife mid-fight. And we chuckle sometimes between barbs like we forgot which characters we were supposed to play because I was given a best friend for all of 6 years. And we handwrote letters each week in bright ink, dreamed of whose hair would give way first, because the dust gave me a reprieve from the storm on the way home from daycare today. Because the rain is a stubborn guard when I am most tired. And grace refuses the chariots, also known as that rickety stroller that has somehow not yet quit, because Brent metamorphoses those ticking minutes everyone else loses sleep over, shows up an hour early, or makes me wait while I reread the menu I've had memorized for a decade, because we pretend we don't know what we'll order, ask each other, then get the chicken pad thai every damn time, because my sister and brother were once small enough to make a home of my curled arm, because I loathed their arrival until that moment on the 7th floor of Mount Sinai, because there are no half-siblings, because my body begins to fail a little more each morning in minute and quiet increments like gradual, gorgeous rust, because I courted death too long, but now dream of my retirement porch, because my son's scalp at 76 seconds old, the 3 weeks he barely slept for more than 15 minutes, the lunges that shaped my quads and calmed his sobbing just long enough, because I have wanted to be a father as long as I have feared its weight, because I exhale knowing I cannot fail what I cannot leave, because no one I know has grown more in 3 decades than my father. Because right now, the oven is performing its miracles. Spring is teasing us with its fickle weather. My daughter is coloring in vibrant looping scrawls that look like cartoon fireworks, or the curls wreathing the large eyes she's borrowed from her mother. And finally, I'm home. I have one more poem. I want to say the most epic thank you to Sanah, Aslam, and everybody from the Bradford Lit Festival. So grateful to be here. And after Anthony performs, I can't wait, and recites his poetry, we will both be out there selling our books. I hope to meet you, whether or not you want to get a book. Thank you all so much again. Give it up for yourselves. Thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate you so much. So in the summer of 2020, which might feel like, does that feel like 20 years ago to anybody else? It's like several generations ago. As there was this ascent of this global movement for Black lives across the world, I remember having like several thoughts as that was happening. You know, I'd turn on Netflix and I'd see Black Lives Matter on Netflix. I was like, okay, I had a couple thoughts. So one thought was, I wonder where we'll be in 2 years. That was one thought. And the second thought was inspired by this post I saw on social media. I still remember it now, okay? It was this post on social media, and there were 4 pictures. And beneath each picture was a year date. So the first picture was a plantation during antebellum slavery in the United States. It said 1849. And next to it was a picture of a concentration camp in Poland during World War II, 1939. And then down to the left, there was a picture of segregated water fountains during the Jim Crow South in the United States. It said 1951. And to the right of that picture was this color photograph of a beautiful suburban house with a white fence around it. And underneath it, it just said, today. And the caption was, whatever you are doing right now is what you would have done. whatever you are doing right now is what you would have done. And I think about that phrase, Black Lives Matter, for those who put that in their front yard when it was trendy, when they didn't have 2 black children that they love dearly and they come home to, when they didn't have a black partner, when they weren't black themselves, when they didn't have people across the world, regardless of association, that deserve humanity. This is my last poem. It's called Elegy for Breath. Picture the adolescent. Picture him mimicking what makes him worthy. Pick his most potent snapshot for clickbait. Fresh-faced but mean-mugging. Same mask I'd pull clean across my jaw for any Polaroid of me and my best friend in 8th grade. Let's be clear, joke stands. Now used to justify killing. Make just the just snuffed, just clumsy youth branded, bold-fonted in bloodthirst. Peace sign transmogrified to gang sign, since the expert talking head confirmed it. The expert talks and confirms inside a rectangular frame that renders most of him invisible. Talks and confirms 2 bullet points from the bleached teeth interviewer. But nowhere is the testimony of breath stifled. The practiced hands that remain watched whenever they ascended, whether in prayer or surrender, holding a bag of groceries, a cell phone, or a son. Nowhere is that last sigh freed from his tired lungs as the 6th shot struck the base of his skull. Sprinting with back turned, the neighbor describes the final sound I did not hear and yet cannot unhear. It is suddenly the last sound I hear from too many people I love. My brother-in-law, my 4 nephews, my high school best friend, my infant son. Every police officer is out in the world defending himself. Every one of them describes the nightmares in which they see a dark object against the darkness that turns into fire and populates a rigid void with lead. Every police officer is a human being. He makes mistakes sometimes. He got nervous. He thought about his 2 kids and his pregnant wife. It was 14 days before retirement. He's never missed a Sunday at church. Believe me, it's true. I've seen him pass the donation plate. Sometimes he takes a naked, crumpled bill in his calloused hands, wipes the sweat and residue on his crotch. I saw Jesus on Easter Sunday, still resting on the wall. A hooded sweatshirt draped across his torso from the college he was to attend, just to make it all a bit more decent. Everything you stare into becomes a fist. A loaded weapon aimed at your face. I wake up in a country based on a single document made to protect every human being equally. Who is a wealthy white man? The woman I meet after my show in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, has no response when I ask her why the killing of 3 dogs made her protest, made her write letters, made her boycott, while the murder of a defenseless black child inspired not a single word from her lips. Loud music blocking the middle of an empty residential street. A wallet in a trembling outstretched palm. A back sprinting away in fear. A woman after a car accident knocking on a door for help. A toy rifle in a Walmart in Ohio. A boy in Money, Mississippi walking lost in thought. A stutter from polio. A whistle he learned to cope with his stammer when the implication of blackness is always absolution from murder. My son's first breath was withheld. The cord that had nourished him for 9 months now choked 3 times around his throat as he fought for life, like his sister at birth, like the father on a sidewalk in Staten, selling cigarettes to support his 6 kids, to survive, born fighting, stayed fighting to breathe. When my son gasped finally and then slumbered into dream, his blooming tenderness unguarded as a single orchid, I said a silent prayer for the imagined crimes his world was busy inventing, to condemn him for being born black and having the courage to breathe.
Carlos Andrés Gómez, amazing. Hear it. So glad you came back to Bradford, Carlos, and we hope you come back again. And it feels like Bradford kind of feels even better compared to America at the moment. So, our final poet of the evening. For me, and as we've heard so powerfully tonight, poetry is about truth and it's about remembering. And I want poetry to get everywhere, to get into every corner of the land and every corner of culture. And I think our final poet, Anthony Anaxagorou, who is a British-born Cypriot poet, is one of the very, very best at getting poetry into all those places. He is, I would say, I kind of wrote this phrase down and I was like, oh, I hope he's okay with this phrase. He's culturally penetrative, which was definitely a good thing, to be culturally penetrative. He has culturally penetrated everywhere from Newsnight to the New Statesman, from the Poetry Review to Sky Arts. And he also gives other poets a much-needed leg up through his outspoken nights in London and the outspoken poetry press. His second collection, After the Formalities, was shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize in 2019, which is a very, very big deal in poetry world. And Granta are publishing his new collection, Heritage Aesthetics. And if you wanted to emulate him and the rest of tonight's amazing poets, you could pick up Anthony's Guide to How to Write It, which is published by Stormzy's imprint, Murky Press. He is culturally penetrative. I'm saying it again, I like it so much. And tonight, he has culturally penetrated to here, to poetry with a punch. So please welcome Anthony Anaxagorou.
Thank you very much. Prepare to be culturally penetrated. Thank you very much. I want to say, so I've been coming here since 2015, I think it is. Yeah, it was 2015. It was the year my kid was born. 2015, and I've seen the festival kind of become what it is now, like one of the kind of cultural staples. Simon and her team have done an absolutely incredible job over the years, and to see it from a little kind of university, being in the kind of back room of a university, to now the whole of the city is amazing. So Simon, man. And just hearing everyone read tonight, you know, like poetry is always in contention somewhere. Someone's having a go at poetry. Either it's Radio 4 people arguing about Larkin and Owen, or Michael Gove going on about Keats. You know, poetry's got such a bad reputation, like public reputation. It needs a PR campaign that's going to take it out of the 19th century and put it into the now. And it's nuts because I live and breathe poetry. Like, I've been doing this for 15 years as a job, and to kind of see how poetry works, how it's seen within the enclaves, like within people, within the community, within the sector and the industry, to how it's seen to the general public, to people that don't write poetry but just enjoy language kind of contorted in this way. It's really interesting. Like, it blows my mind all the time how many, like, it's so bipolar, like it has so many different sides to it. And I'm interested in how it's received, even from a live space as well. And I've written about it, I lecture about it, I talk about it, I think about it. But ultimately, it's about language and it's about connection. And I don't think there is one way you can connect, and I don't think there is one way you can talk. And so I'm interested in the kind of ways in which we can fracture language to create new meaning, because my belief is that the moment that you change the order of language, you create new thought. You disrupt the social order by creating new systems of speech. So poetry that disrupts syntactically and linguistically is essentially creating new systems of thought just by that very act. So it's very radical in that regard. So I'm going to read some poems tonight from this new book before I turn this into a lecture and get the PowerPoint out. So I'm going to read poems from this new book that I've been working on since 2019. What I'm going to do is I've said to myself, I'm not going to contextualize the poems. It's not pretentious or elitist or snobbish or kind of solipsistic. It's just the fact that I want it to be immersive. So the more I tell you about my intention with the poems, the less you're involved. You just follow my guidelines, right? So if I say this was a poem about my shoe on the 3rd of November, whatever, that's the poem now. Whereas if I say nothing, it's for you. Like, I'm literally opening the doors and saying, make yourself at home, put the kettle on, take your shoes off, let the dog out before you go to bed. It's that kind of thing. And that's really what I want to try and do. So, context for the book, and then I'm just going to blitz through it, is that this is very much based around 2 questions. I work from questions. I don't start writing projects from knowing what I'm doing. I begin with a series of questions. And the first one was looking at the Cypriot identity. My family from Cyprus, both my parents were born under the British Empire. Cyprus got independence in 1960. My grandmother was born in 1921. That was also under the British Empire. So I was interested in looking at how being born in a foreign country under British rule and then coming to Britain at the age of 5 changed their relationship to me, Cypriotness and Britishness, if that makes sense. And that's really what the kind of book looks at. So it looks at the father that I see as colonialism and patriarchy, which are all part of the same thing. Me, the guy in the middle, and then my son. So it follows like this 3 kind of generation pattern, and there's a whole load of things going on in between that. So when I start with those questions, I then shoot off into all these different kind of spaces. And then the second strand that runs through the book is the idea of a protest. Because a protest, you lose your individuality. You take on the kind of culture and, I guess, the fervour of a group, and that becomes the thing, right? But within the protest, there is also the individual. And I became really interested in that kind of dynamic. You know, who are you with a placard? Are you the group, or are you with a placard in the group? And so some of these poems are kind of getting into, or drilling down. So some poems kind of like do this, and some poems go down. So with this book, I tried to drill down into the thinking. Right, that's enough of that. That's 5 minutes waffling on. Let's get into it. So I'm going to just blitz through, and we're going to finish at 10 o'clock. So that's how it's going to go. So buckle up. It's been great. Thanks for having me. Because usually what happens is I just do the poems and I just walk off. And that's probably what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to say goodbye from now. And then I'll see you all in 25 minutes. All right. So the first one is called For Those Who Demand Evidence. What I wouldn't give to turn silent today, to lead the front line of language towards the cliff, dropping my sad mornings beside some gentle accident. It's my friends I'm thinking of, dead inside their faultless bodies, offering up ground. I'll donate a modicum of hard cash to the approaching circus. 2 fatigued elephants carting heirlooms, rebranding this new age vacuum-packed consciousness. I wish I could play an instrument on days like today. A stoned pianist with poor posture, forfeiting moral hands for the freedom of a chord. I swear to be part of anything that sees me. I can't stress this enough. A famous past stole our homes. My family survived empire. A violence to my father's head. I was only a boy then, with squeaky clean shoes, his pants all sullied. Now I'm paying institutions to read up on what was originally mine, ripping body parts off eugenicists, bigots preserved in specimen jars, England. I've spent so long inside your history, it's like there will never be another way round this black torch held between your fangs, clapping at the end of an American movie. How do we stop? Let love move us naturally. Dodge another set knee, the weight of our dead. One last plea, what I wouldn't give to turn silent today before statistics catch a siren, turn into a baton, swinging meat, slave roads shimmying under brute force, the second coming down above his temple, her pelvis cracking law into order, forced to beg a badge, says what it wants. My friends, lost to daylight, appearances in platoons of cameras, my country, your country, rolling like jackals, thick with a sickness for blood, blonde, blue, white. This is called Across From Here. Where I began, for argument's sake, let's call it love. Each day pinned to the next. My mother, when using my father's name, would know what to do with us. And him, far away in an unlit capital, already falling further into his glasses. Our kitchen table, minus his rage, a column missing its figure, where I first said aloud, father, or dad, or sir, or nation, to a blank seat, a white plate, one mottled prune, the severed leg of our cat. So let's say, for argument's sake, I was a good boy looking for my father in songs or movies or the house of my childhood, which burnt down the last day of summer. A whole family died. My mother saying it's fine for boys to feel terrible and ruined alone in life, which ends up infecting us all. And God knows why. It's sod's law. We find ourselves whispering father into the side of a pillow, a boy's head cracked open, his ears leaking father all over the canteen floor, unswept crumbs, a mirror under the bed, 2 shot pheasants by the sink, waiting for my mother the day he returned. Father left my mouth differently. I started to declare words no longer mine, catchphrases dead inside their box. The meaning of father, never looked back to check I was still there. Over time, some words come close to disappearing, kept alive only by the people who repeat them. Father, for argument's sake, let's call it love, where I began. Let's do Futurist Prime and then I'll go back to it. Last night they broke into the confidence shop, leaving nothing but mirrors. The whole time I was awake trying to fix my router. Today I'm sipping Americanos with 6 new interns, pontificating on the stoicism on lifeguards, who grew up in rural England with all the prospects of a stationary outlet. In a few hours, a man will walk down the street in Birmingham to drive a knife into a person he's never heard laugh. Violence only teaches us how to keep returning to it. In real life, we share 1/3 of our DNA with mushrooms. Some facts need to be written down before they're believed. My landlord spends his holidays on a Cumbrian field with his wife, who coincidentally happens to be my brother's landlord. There, they hold each other inside a small blue tent after weeks of heavy rain. I imagine them laying over some part of 100 million insects, which constitute the majority of the world's biomass. How their gorgeous, slow lovemaking might sound to a swarm of abstaining termites, a single ant roving the near underworld with nothing but a crumb of honest soil. I think about the cost of living and how for now we're alive enough to fuck on top of the earth, our bodies fecund with unripe disease. In 40 years, my son will be updating his CV for a job that doesn't exist yet. I'll be sat like a bookmark at the kitchen table, stirring tea in an easy way, thinking about my mother and father and the day's water was water. A soft-voiced lady with perfect posture will project onto the wall of my living room via a device fixed to the roof, hoping to sell me a brighter version of myself, saying something like, "We'll keep the future in your size." I'll decline, returning to the sofa. Well, I'll remember the greengrocer, the joys of his old Instagram account full of organic kale and deals on kombucha. Then before I do anything else, I'll think, the penis really does not age well. Let's do, now my ego wants better things. Evenings shoulder into the jasmine, fouler than a fatted cock. Each peony born to its station grows towards similar heights. We write so well for our kind, license the lexicon of power like the narcissism of a bullet. Stand by for a pylon in snow. History's digital cache dilates. News gets crowned our century's insomniac. You're struggling to backpedal, spinning around the flush. I'll come clean. I can't stomach these tiny screens. 10-minute videos. Someone's about to get cancelled. You know where this is heading. Some never get to come back as I'm sorry. How do you look so authentic in reproach? Breath rich in hemoglobin. Your smirk thick with lipids. You know some lives won't make it the full way. Again, bodies will be snuffed at a red light. At the bottom of your rhetoric, semantics cruel. I want to vandalize speech, repurpose each syllable with a fairer way of shaping. You sit, sharing a ready-made war, bickering over its origin. You and I know the world is the last time for some of us who want life slowed. Each hashtag comes with a perfect set of holes, a cell. No matter the protest our actions become, we'll be hauling our slang around like a state, calling back its dogs, who brand wounds to sell them on, no matter the language we arrive in, no matter how long it's been since. Really going to try and find that one that I wanted to read earlier. I'm looking for it, man. I'm looking for the thing. Maybe I'll do Endgame. Endgame's fun. I'll do Endgame, and then, or should I, no, you know what? I'll do these two long ones. Oh, here we go, I found it. Quotidian theories. All right. You don't know if it's any good yet. I don't know. I've just said the title. But so this reminded me of a conversation that me and Carlos were having earlier. Quotidian theory. De Silva suggests the death of God gave birth to 4 white men. Appiah has it as the Battle of Tours. I'm rereading Rankin. 75.8% of Puerto Ricans self-identify as white. At lunch, I share the quote with P, who removes his Sanah Booker cap. Suppose, I say, referencing Linda Alcoff, selves are constituted in relationship to communities that have been racially constructed. What then happens when there are multiple conflicting communities through which a self is constituted? We split the bill, check to see if it's raining before becoming more East London. So who are the 4 white men? Sussman has it as Grant, Davenport, Osborne, and Laughlin. Each attempted to monopolize anthropology in the early 20th century. But can racism and its apparatus be accurately documented? Uyghur, Rohingya, Kashmir, Armenia, Palestine, Sudan, Yemen, Sami. History is here, happening to us. Are we not all predisposed to at least some degree of tribalism? Discuss. As in, whose life matters more, your mother's or the stranger's toppled by a sparrow? I've read about historical persecution of the Chinese. I've written a paper on East Timor. That Darwin quote, or was it Baldwin? Probably Baldwin. I think all theories are suspect. What's America Britain's greatest fear? On the green, A asks why I even care. After all, she says, I could pass if I wanted. At the end of Roland Storrs' orientations, he observes the Cypriot, noting, I understand a white and a black gentleman, but these in-betweens, I do not want to understand. I cite the opening of Sharif Shanan's poem, Asma. I get tired of carrying the beating my grandmother inherited, the Great Britain my father inherited, my mother inherited my brother, inherited my sister working against my father's inheritance, my father, his father's mother gets tired of carrying, I pull at the grass. Witness a cloud, vomit a pair of ostrich feathers, recall a line from the critic who reviewed my book, Violence and Its Children. Maggie Nelson's The Art of Cruelty examines the work of performance artist Nal Bastami, who said, I really encourage you to leave your body. I'm having a conversation with R regarding the way a body is rendered through a public imagining. Who gets to speak on behalf of the body, etc., and carry all the way home? Who decides which body can leave, which body can stay? How will a body become seen or heavy enough to sleep, marvelous enough to fuck, understanding itself in the life of itself? Whose body gets to pirouette? Whose body makes a perfect target? Whose body is kept awake by the body politic? I'm alive in Great Britain, I'm alive, so who's that lying next to me? Around the wooden table, there's some talk. I don't know about the you or the me they keep referring to, but my country is split between this and that. Composed of distances, a border bill, okay, I take pleasure in exploiting my emergencies. Imagine this amount of knowing, and still a child grows into a question. In Paul Bloom's Against Empathy, he writes, empathy is limited in that it focuses on specific individuals. Its spotlight nature renders it innumerate and myopic. I'm back around the wooden table for the last time where we make our requests. So far each week the menu has been different. My son asked why we shoot to kill the only species that fly. Is that why they invented God and superheroes? Sweet kid. If you're serious, take off the falconry glove to feel how the raptor really has it. All right, now I'll do this last one. It should take us to 10 o'clock. Or should I do? I'll do the last one. So this last poem, I'll give you a little bit of context because otherwise it will just seem a bit odd. This last one was going to be the title of the book actually, but then I changed it around later on. And there was a British writer called Lawrence Durrell, and in 1958 he wrote a book called The Bitter Lemons of Cyprus. Some of you guys might have read it. It's published by Faber, and to this day, it's the biggest selling book on Cyprus that exists. I read the book a couple of years ago, and it was one of the most racist and kind of propagandist books that I'd ever read. And what I wanted to do, I got so mad at the book, because he was an English guy that went over there and was basically trying to say that England needs to stay colonising Cyprus because these guys are idiots, they don't know what they're doing, we need to be here. And people bought it. So I basically took a lot of the quotes from the book and I wrote this poem about it. My great-grandfather was killed in the 1974 war. His body was never recovered. And it's always been a thing that we kind of wanted to look for where he might be buried, but no one actually knows. They know roughly where it is. So I kind of put the two together and made this poem out of that. There's a big quote at the beginning by a guy called William Hepworth Dixon, who was stationed in Cyprus in 1887, just when the English took over from the Ottomans. So, perhaps a rhetoric. This poem's called Perhaps a Rhetoric, and it begins with a quote by William Hepworth Dixon. What they are, they were, and what they were, they are. An indolent, careless, and mimetic people, but without a spark of Turkish fire, without a touch of Grecian taste, with neither beauty of body nor sense of beauty in mind, with neither personal restlessness nor pride of origin, with neither large aspirations nor practical dexterity of hand, they live on in a limpid state, like creatures of the lower types clinging to life for life's own sake, the luxuries of the sun and sea, holding on by simple animal tenacity, though tempests which have wrecked the nobler races of mankind. reminding one that the whole island is geologically simply an appendix to the Anatolian continent, which at some point has been broken off and set free to float. From where the travel writer stood in a doorway to invent a hybrid people mining history, singular as carob tree grounds, raising flags, vernaculars flattened by a litter of corpses, boys, did I tell you about my great-grandfather who was moved out of his body by rifles in 74 on Cyprus, maritime spirits decolored its waters, London, Rome, Venice, Turkey, Egypt, Byzantium. When I first stood up to a mirror, I couldn't tell what I was supposed to be looking at. The day I left home to hunt down my roots, I knew I'd find ideologies trapped under prefixes, litigating around the kitchen table. When I asked my father who we were, his mouth, packed with pork and brine, provided only the word Helene, facing away from my mother's dead grandfather. I probed deeper to learn why that dark muleteer was expelled from his life near a ditch he dug alone, 7 miles north of the capital, Lefkosia or Nicosia or Lefkosia. Bullets he'd feel but not see. I needed to stand over the exact patch where his blood dulled. My father, with the last of the bread, carried on mopping the juices from his plate. Recent research has carried the history of Cyprus back to the early Neolithic age, when the island seems to have been first settled by an enterprising people whose origins are obscure. From the Latin, obscurus, dark, from the Indo-European root, to cover. I'm dragging my body back to the middle, attempting to conjure the flight path. I'm headed to the village where my mother was born, 7 miles north of the capital, bound in a nightshirt with little to record light. While the travel writer reclines in business class, scrawling in his moleskin, I feel to walk over, to blunt the edge of each phrase, to ask what he means by in-betweens, Anatolian, hybrids, Asiatics. On landing, I follow him through passport control, over to the taxi rank where he takes another look around before scribbling Belapi. I want to change it to Belapi or Belapi or Belapi. Boys, I'm back here looking for those black scorpions, aberrant and brazen in leather sandals. An old harbour man warns me of chaining myself to a burning rock, saying I should apologize to past fires. In the next chapter, the travel writer will invent a new kind of flame, distinguishable from the last, where he'll sit like a monument on a red hill, ordering everything he refuses to understand northwards: anemones, monasteries, mosques, olive branches, snake boots. It was an odd letter from a factory hand who was dying to know about the world and thought that a pen pal was the best way to find out. She asked Leonidas whether everyone in Cyprus was black and wore nightshirts. To dream in the skin's original language, Etio-Cypriot, to speak up against Persians, Phoenicians, Greeks, Assyrians. The travel writer spends his evenings bickering with mosquitoes, drunk under vineyards. Boys, I need you to come across the Mizora plain which gave me a mother. Years before the war, practiced throwing bodies of children into wells, marched men across the sea, their limbs like gleaming skewers underwater. The travel writer sits at his desk with all this knowledge while I beg on for a better direction, a little understanding, passing the corroded motorbike, the grey donkey with hoof avulsion. I'm 7 miles north from the capital. The travel writer hooks his gaze to a Venetian window, to where Moshful Bay withdraws its wash, starting each chapter with a green line. His hands at work. A widow is no good to anyone here, folding life inside a crease. The shepherd signals to where a girl learns to fly a kite with her father, her arm calligraphy. I head towards them to see how the sun bleaches the Troodos Mountains white. But that is what these islands are for. They are places where different destinies can meet and intersect in the full isolation of time. Until the travel writer decides his final chapter is complete, the book written, packing away possessions, ordering a taxi back to the airport. In the square, the subjects have gathered to oppose the lynching of a 12-year-old boy who fired at a British soldier. The travel writer asks his driver to stop near the checkpoint to watch the noose around the boy's neck, a warm patch appearing, darkening his shorts, washing the residue from his legs. The travel writer spits out the stone from a date, declaring, "If you kill, you must die." Cries from the crowd console the same copper dirt my great-grandfather was fed. The travel writer lights his last cigarette at the exact moment the boy swings from right to left. Governor Harding ordered the boy's body not to be returned to his mother. 7 miles north of the capital, I'm told I'm standing by the exact spot where my great-grandfather's house once stood. Cyclamens now in bloom. And just there, if you keep walking past the old Mukhtar's hut, you'll notice in the earth a mound surrounded by a minor depression. Where's the other guy? All right, so what we're going to do is like Glee. I'll move it up and then stick it on the bird app, and then we like, so 1, 2, 3.
You see, that's why he's culturally penetrative. It's like the Oscars, that. But his poetry, mesmerising, immersive, and actually, as he said, disruptive. And that feels like that has been, again, a theme of so much of the poetry tonight. It has disrupted language and thought, but sort of remade them in a way that's knitted our brains, bodies, and hearts together. And that's kind of always good for a Thursday night, I reckon. And why this gig is called Poetry with a Punch and not Poetry with a Gentle Nudge. Poetry with a light tap. That would not be right. It has definitely been poetry with a punch. So all that remains is to say, please do buy the brilliant books of the poets after. And Anthony particularly, and Carlos will be signing now because they weren't signing before, but actually all the poets will be hanging about. The festival continues for 3 more days. Personally, tomorrow night I'm interviewing Dom Jolly, and then Saturday I'm doing much stuff to do with the Brontes, including having a slide of the Chuckle Brothers in my Brontes for Beginners talk. So if you want to see why that could possibly be, basically other famous northern siblings, then come along to that. This has been an absolutely amazing night for me. I only stepped in 2 days ago. I'm so glad I did, because these were 5 of the best poets I've seen. So can we hear it again for Sanah, Ahsan, Atif Tokir, Malika Booker, Carlos Andrés Gómez, Anthony Anaxagorou, Poetry with a Punch. Thank you very much for coming. Good night.
And can we please hear it for Kate Fox, whose book is also out there, and she has been an amazing, amazing host for the evening. Please put your hands together for Kate.